have Prof.M.S Pundheer in our amidst, and it will be very interesting and nice that someone having really a competence in medieval history and particularly Mughal history would be here to offer his observations about the lecture which we are going to have, the fourth, maybe fourth or fifth, although will correct me, the fourth lecture in the series of the coins of India from 6th century BC to the present, to the period with which he is now detailing and addressing the coins of Mughal period of India. And really, when we go through the slides which we presented, we find how Devanagari script also finds presence in the coins, and something like the blending, if one may be allowed to say like that, the blending of Arabic and Persian and Sanskrit that takes place in different forms, and particularly it is reflected in the coins of Mughal India. So, without wasting time, I should say, I may invite Dr. Azeem Ali to come up with his presentation. And the persons who are to join, they will be gradually joining, because we have 1 hour. So instead of just waiting for others to join, I would just request that Dr. Azeem Ali may come up in his presentation. And again, I welcome the honorable audience, and particularly I should welcome Professor Pundheer Sahab, who has been a friend of Banaras University and has been always there in our university whenever we requested his presence. So it's very nice that he is there. Now I request Dr. Azeem Ali to come up with his presentation of the Mughal coins. Please.
Thank you. Sorry, yeah, can you see my screen? Yeah. Okay.
Yes, your screen is seen, very much visible.
Okay, so today I'm going to be presenting on the coins of Mughal India from Babur to Aurangzeb. So just a short recap from my last lecture. So we looked at how the Tuluk dynasty came to power in 1320 and how they kind of stabilized the rule of the Delhi Sultanate, and how the efforts to centralize the rule of the Delhi Sultanate caused a lot of alienation among many of the nobles in the Delhi Sultanate, and this led to the emergence of independent sultanates across India, including in Gujarat, Bengal, Jaunpur, and the Deccan, particularly with the Bamani Sultanate. And despite this kind of division within India, there was the development of a more sophisticated mercantile economy, which was driven by regulated monetary policies that began to be kind of integrated with the rest of the world over time. So we can start from the beginning of that, and this will continue under the Mughals, who I'm going to be talking about. I'm going to start with Babur. So here is painting of Babur laying out a garden. So Babur was born Zahiruddin Muhammad, and he was born in 1483 in Andijan in Fargana, which is in present-day Uzbekistan. He was a son of Umar Sheikh Mirza, a descendant of Amir Timur, and his mother was Kutluk Nigah Khanum, a descendant of Genghis Khan. At the age of 12, Babur inherited a small Timuri kingdom from his father when he sadly passed away in 1494. And at the age of 15, Babur conquered Samarkand in an attempt to rebuild the Timurid Empire. but he would lose both Samarkand and Fergana and be forced to look to the southeast in present-day Afghanistan to build a new kingdom. And by 1504, Babur had conquered Kabul and established himself as king there. And from Afghanistan, Babur saw trade caravans arriving from India, and this kind of piqued his interest in conquering India, which he now sought to invade. Babur saw India as his birthright because of Timur's conquest of Delhi in 1398, which I had described in a lot of detail in my previous lecture. And thanks to the weakening of the northwest frontier of the Delhi Sultanate under the Lodi dynasty, there was an opportunity for Babur to invade. And Babur conducted a series of raids into India, and this culminated in his defeat of Ibrahim Lodi on the 21st of April 1526 at Panipat in Haryana. And Babur's success in battle lay in the use of gunpowder weapons, particularly muskets and cannons, which were provided with the help from the Ottomans. And Babur established his capital of his kind of new empire in India, in Agra, which had been the capital of the Delhi Sultanate under the Lodis. And in 1527, Babur secured his position in India after defeating Rana Sangha of Mewar and his Lodi allies in Kanwa in Rajasthan. But unfortunately, Babur wouldn't enjoy victory for long, as he died on the 26th of December 1530 after falling seriously ill. Babur's son Nasiruddin Muhammad Humayun succeeded him in that year. Now we're going to look at Babur's coinage. So Babur minted silver sharukis, such as these. And these were modeled on the tankas that had been struck by his Timurid ancestors. And the obverse of Babur's sharukis have inscriptions in Arabic. And these inscriptions include the following: Zahil al-Din Muhammad Babur, Badshah Ghazi, Al-Sultan Al-Azam wa Al-Khakan Al-Mukarram, which means flourishing of the faith, Muhammad Babur, warrior emperor, the great sultan, and the commander, the honored. And there's also only one surviving gold Ashrafi, or miskal of Babur, and this shares the same inscription as the silver sharukis. And here is one of the silver sharukis. So you can see Babur's name and title here on the obverse, and then the kalima here on the reverse. And no mint is given, but these are often attributed to Kabul in Afghanistan. And here is the gold coin. There's only one that survives, and it came up at auction recently, I believe this year. And again, quite similar with Babur's titles on the obverse. You can just about make out Muhammad here, and then the kalima here, which is the declaration of faith of Muslims. And Babur also minted bronze coinage, which was influenced by the kind of bronze coinage that was in circulation on the Lodis. And these have inscriptions on the obverse in Arabic with the year, Fi Tariq Sanat, and then in the Arabic numeral system 936, which means at the date year 936 Hijri, which is about 1529 AD. And the reverse says in Arabic, Al-Zab Badar Kila Agra, which means struck at the place of Agra fort. And here is one of the bronze coins. And I got this from a forum, but and I found this image particularly helpful because then you kind of visualize what's actually written. So you can see Fi here, and then Tariq here, and then the year here, which is Sanat, and then you can see the numerals, which is 936. And then here you can see, in Arabic, Al-Zab, Ba, Da, and then here, Kila, and then Agra here. So it's quite helpful to kind of visualize what's written on the actual coins. And now I'm going to look at Humayun. So Humayun was born Nasiruddin Muhammad, and he succeeded his father Babur in 1530. And as according to Timurid traditions, the Mughal Empire was divided between Humayun and his brothers Hindal and Kamran. And despite the inevitable rivalry with his brothers, Humayun did have some initial military successes when he defeated the Lodis in Lucknow, in Uttar Pradesh, as well as defeating the Gujarat and Malabar sultanates. But unfortunately for Humayun, the most serious threat for him would emerge from the eastern part of his empire in Bihar, where Shah Suri rose to power with support from Afghans in the region to resist the Mughals. And Shah Suri was able to defeat Humayun at the Battle of Chausa in Bihar and establish his own kingdom and forced Humayun to flee to Iran. And Shah Suri built quite a few structures across India, but this is one of the structures. This is the Qila-e-Purna Masjid in Purana Qila in Delhi. Some of you may have visited this. And now I'm going to look at the Suri dynasty briefly, because it's very important in the development of numismatics. Shah Suri established his power base in Delhi and developed the monetary system of North India. And this led to the emergence of the rupee, which was inherited by the Mughals under Humayun and Akbar, and which in turn would be later inherited by the princely states of India, the British Raj, as well as the present-day Republic of India. And Shah Suri is also remembered for building the Grand Trunk, or GT Road, which was inherited by the Mughals and used to facilitate commerce across North India, with many caravanserais being built along this route for travellers to rest. And Shah Suri was also successful militarily, and was able to conquer the Bengal Sultanate, which had long resisted control from Delhi, going back to the Delhi Sultanate era. But unfortunately, Shah Suri's reign would come to an end when he was killed in an accident during the siege of Kalinjar in Madhya Pradesh, and his successors would prove to be ineffectual in holding together the Suri Empire. And this weakness would entice Humayun to conquer India with help from the Safavid Shah in Iran, Shah Tahmasp. And Shah Suri minted the first rupees, and these were modeled on tankas initially, which were inherited from the Delhi Sultanate and its regional successors. And these silver rupees included swastikas a lot of the time to help them gain acceptance with Hindu merchants and moneylenders in the Suri Empire. And the obverse and reverse of these coins typically include Arabic, Persian, and Nagari scripts. So the obverse reads in Arabic and Persian, Abu al-Muzaffar Farid, al-Dunya wa al-Din, al-Sultan Shah Khalad Allah Mulkahu, which means the victor, unique in this world and of the faith, the Sultan Shah. May God prolong his kingdom. And there's also Nagari script on the obverse, stating Sri Shah, so Lord Shah, almost kind of harkening back to the pre-Islamic period where Shah is being stylized as an Indian or Hindu king. And the year is also given on these coins, which is 949 Hijri, which is about 1542 AD. And the mint is also stated. In this case, this coin is minted in Rasulpur, which is now Patna. And this tells us that Patna kind of regained its importance as a city under Shah Suri. And here is the coin, struck in Rasulpur, which is now Patna. You can see the swastika here, which I mentioned. And then you can see the kind of kalima here, and then Shah Suri's titles, and then Nagari script at the bottom here. And Shah Suri also struck fraction pesos. These are known as 1/8 pesos, and these coins also have Arabic and Persian script on the obverse and reverse. The obverse reads in Arabic, Al-Sultan Al-Zaman, which means the Sultan, Caliph of the age. And then the reverse says in Persian, Sultan Shah, and then 949 Hijri, which is again 1542 AD. And here is one of the coins, and you can see the year here, and then with no mint given in this case. And now we're going to go back to Humayun, who at this time had wandered in exile. And after wandering across India, he went to Afghanistan and eventually crossed into modern-day Iraq in northern Afghanistan. And Humayun and his followers traveled to Qazvin in Iran, and Qazvin had been the seat of power of the Afghans at the time, as their previous capital, Tabriz, had been sacked and occupied by the Ottomans. Humayun was able to he kind of feigned conversion to Shia Islam in exchange for military aid from Shah Tahmasp. And while in Iran, Humayun also invited the Persian artists Mir Sayyid Ali and Abbas Samad, who both later found the Mughal school of miniature painting of great renown under Humayun's son, Akbar. And with the support from the Safavids, Humayun defeated his brother Kamran in Kabul and conquered Kandahar and Afghanistan. He then proceeded to invade India, where he conquered Punjab and Delhi. By the 23rd of July 1555, Humayun was the emperor of a restored Mughal Empire. But Humayun wouldn't enjoy new conquests for long, as in a famous historical account, which I'm sure some of you know, that he famously died after tumbling down the steps of the Shah Mandal in Purana-Kila, after participating in his favorite kind of hobby, which was astronomy and astrology. And going to look at Humayun's coins. So in addition to Shahrukis like his father, which he also struck, such as these. This is the Shahruki of Humayun, struck in Lahore. Humayun also minted copper pesos with Arabic inscriptions on the obverse and Persian on the reverse. On the obverse, Humayun's pesos typically read Al-Tariq Sana Hijri 939, which means in the year 939 Hijri, which is about 1532. So struck early in his reign. And the reverse reads Da Alzab Mutabak Jaunpur, which means in the mint of sanctified Jaunpur, which is now in Uttar Pradesh. And it had been an important regional sultanate before, as mentioned in my previous lecture. And here is the copper pesa struck in Jaunpur mint, with the year given here. And Humayun also struck lightweight copper coinage, known as a phallus, and these weigh between 4 and 4.5 grams. And the word phallus ultimately derived its name from the late Roman phallus, and it had been adopted by the Arab armies after their conquest of Roman territory in the Middle East in the 7th century AD. And one example of Humayun's phalluses has the following inscription in Persian on the obverse, which says Zab Phallus Agra, which means phallus, or this phallus struck in Agra. And the reverse reads in Arabic Fi Tariq Noshad Va Chahel, which means in the year 940 Hijri, which is about 1533 to 1534 AD. And here is one of the lightweight copper phalluses struck in Agra, in Uttar Pradesh, in 940 Hijri. And Humayun also struck fractional gold coins such as these, quite small. And these coins were called 1/8 mitkals. And the inscriptions on the coins include a mixture of Persian and Arabic. Muhammad Humayun Bacha Ghazi Khud Allahu Ta'ala Mulkahu, which means Muhammad Humayun, warrior emperor, may God prolong his kingdom. And these coins were struck in Badakhshan, which is now in northern Afghanistan. And here is one of them. This is a particularly nice example. You can see the kalama and then Humayun's titles. This is from Badakhshan Mint. And now we're going to look at Humayun's son, Akbar, who to many scholars represent the pinnacle of the Mughal Empire. So Akbar was born Jalaluddin Muhammad on the 15th of October 1542 in Umarkot in Sindh to Humayun and his wife Hamida Banu Begum. And famously, his birth was deemed auspicious according to Indian astrologers at the time. But despite these auspicious circumstances, Akbar had a very unfortunate very early childhood because he was separated from his parents because they had to flee to Safavid Iran. And Akbar was left in the care of his father's rival and brother, Kamran. And by 1555, though, Akbar had returned to his family after his father had reconquered and retaken the Mughal Empire. And following the death of Humayun in 1556, Akbar succeeded to him and acceded to the throne in Kolanur in Punjab at the age of 13. And Akbar had more in common with his grandfather Babur in having a strong willpower and focus compared to his own father. And this would serve him well when he faced the first challenge of his reign. Hemu Vikramaditya had initially served the successors of Shah Jahan before establishing himself as king. And he threatened the newly restored Mughal Empire, and Akbar's general mentor Bayram Khan helped Akbar defeat Hemu at the Second Battle of Panipat in November 1556. And 4 years later, Bayram Khan fell out of favor with Akbar and was killed by bandits on his way to Mecca, where he was to live in exile. And Babur's foster brother Adam Khan rose to gain favor, but he too would fall out of favor with Akbar. Adam Khan had conquered Malwa of Akbar, but he treated the people brutally and kept the loot for himself. And Adam Khan would take one step too far when he killed a minister who replaced him at Akbar's court in Agra. And as a result, Akbar had him put to death. And this showed that Akbar was was willing to assert his power in a way that his father couldn't, or perhaps was unable to. And Akbar also undertook military campaigns in Rajasthan to secure control of the region for the Mughals. And famously, it was in Ajmer Sharif where Akbar pleaded at the shrine of Khaja Muhyiddin Chishti for a son. And this wish was granted with the birth of his son, Nuruddin Salim, in Fatehpur Sikri in Uttar Pradesh. Salim was born in 1569. And Akbar would establish his capital in Fatehpur Sikri, where he reigned from 1571 to 1585. And geographically, it was ideally placed for him to conduct his campaigns in Rajasthan. And one of Akbar's greatest military successes was in 1576 when he defeated Rana Pratap Singh of Mewar at the Battle of Haldigati. And he went on to consolidate his rule over Rajasthan, while also consolidating his alliances through marriages with other dynasties in the region, which is a famous policy that Akbar undertook and was continued by future Mughal rulers. And Akbar also would spend much of the 1570s and onwards expanding and consolidating his empire into Bihar and Bengal. And after his conquest of Gujarat in 1572, Akbar came into contact with the Portuguese, with whom there were embassies exchanged. And among these embassies, Akbar came in contact with Catholicism, and this contributed to Akbar's interest in other religions, which is he's famous for. And this would culminate in 1578 when he had a mystical vision, and this would influence the formation of his new religion, Din Ilahi. And this would complement his policy, which is quite famous, of Sul-e-Kul, which means peace with all, which exemplified his policy of religious tolerance. And after Akbar abandoned Fatehpur Sikri in 1585, he moved to Lahore in Punjab to assert Mughal power there. And it was from Lahore that Akbar secured control of Kabul, Ghazni and Gardez in Afghanistan. And this ensures the security of trade routes with Central Asia and Iran. Akbar also conquered Kashmir, Sindh, Balochistan and Kandahar, which is now in Afghanistan. And whilst in Lahore, Akbar built a royal fort for himself where he would reside until 1598. And Akbar would spend the last remaining decade of his rule kind of embroiled in campaigns to expand the Mughal Empire into the Deccan, which would be inherited by his successors. Akbar established subas, or provinces, in Khandesh, Ahmadnagar and Berar. But his last major challenge came from his own son, Salim. Salim had grown impatient by the 1600s, as he felt his father had grown old, and it was time for him to take power. And he rebelled against Akbar, but this rebellion was crushed, and Akbar famously admonished his son in Agra in 1604. And Akbar would die in October 1605 and was buried in Sikandra in Uttar Pradesh. And he was succeeded by his son Salim. And Akbar's reign saw the formal establishment of trade relations with the Portuguese, which allowed for the flow of silver and bronze into the Mughal Empire, which was struck as coinage in the Mughal mints. Much of the Portuguese silver came from the new Spanish colonies in Central and South America, while the bronze came from Japan. This silver was struck as rupees, while the bronze was used to mint copper dams, and this allowed for Akbar to spend lavishly on his campaigns in the later part of his reign. So we look at Akbar's copper dams. So Akbar struck both full and fractional copper dams, and the half copper dams had Persian inscriptions on the obverse and reverse. On the obverse it states Zab Falus Lahore, which means this phallus was struck in Lahore, in Punjab, and the reverse gives a new different calendar called the Din Alahi calendar. In this case it says in the Din Alahi year, 36. And here is the half copper dam of Akbar, struck in Lahore, according to the Ilahi calendar. You can see 3 and 6 in the Arabic numerals. And here is a graph which shows the kind of output of Akbar's silver mint. So you can see towards the end of his reign, you can see this real massive increase in production, particularly in Ahmedabad. So it's attested the prosperity of the Mughal Empire at the time. And this is in metric tons of silver. You can see the sheer amount of silver that was being struck as coinage under Akbar. And now we're going to look at Akbar's silver rupees, which were based on his own Ilahi calendar. And these coins typically have Arabic on the obverse and Persian on the obverse. On the obverse it says Allahu Akbar, Jalla Jallahu. And here is one of the coins. And this means God is great and exalted is he. And in this case, Akbar is kind of a double pun. So it's not only referring to God, but also referring to Akbar himself. And this was considered by people at the time to be kind of a pun, which is kind of deliberately done by Akbar. And the reverse says Zab Ahmedabad, Shariva Ilahi 43, which means struck in Ahmedabad, which is now Gujarat, in the month of Shariva, which is based on the Persian calendar, in between 1596 and 1597 AD. And here is one of the silver Ilahi type rupees struck in Ahmedabad by Akbar. So you can see here kind of the mint in year given here, and then Allahu Akbar, Jalla Jallahu. And Akbar also minted coins while his army was campaigning, as he had a mobile mint. And this was known, the mint was known as the Urdu Zafakarin. And here's one of them. This is from Rajasthan. So this quite possibly was minted when Akbar was campaigning in Rajasthan. And these are square-shaped. And these were used to pay Akbar's soldiers. And these coins include inscriptions in Arabic, Persian, and Turkic. And this says, Khalad Allah Ti'ala Mulkahu, Muhammad Akbar Badshah, Jalal al-Din Ghazi, Zab Urdu Zafakarin, which means, may God on high ground perpetuate his kingdom. Emperor Muhammad Akbar, glory of the faith, struck in the victorious camp. And here is one of the coins, and you can see here quite helpfully, the inscriptions here. So you can see Khalad Allah Ti'ala Mulkahu, Muhammad Akbar Badshah, Jalal al-Din Ghazi, and then Zab Urdu Zafakarin. And as Professor Pundheer had hinted at before, in the previous lectures, Akbar's also struck his famous Ram Siyar rupees. And these are very rare and highly desired, because obviously they have an image of Lord Ram and Goddess Sita. And these silver rupees have Persian inscriptions on the obverse and an image of Lord Ram with Goddess Sita on reverse with Divana Nagari script, which is obviously still used to write Hindi today. And the Persian inscriptions on the obverse state Ilahi Ahmadad, which means in the Ilahi year 50, which is 1605 AD, so right at the end of Akbar's reign, Ahmadad. And the reverse has the following inscriptions in Devanagari script, and it says Ram Siya. And you can see here the Lord Ram and Goddess Sita here, and then Ram Siya, and then you can see here the Persian inscriptions, and this was struck in Agra at the very end of Akbar's reign. Very beautiful, very low floral design, very artistic dye that was used to mint this coin. And Akbar also struck the first kind of mohurs, and the weight of these coins would remain the template for gold mohurs in India for the next 300 years. And he also minted a form of mohur known as mirabis. And these gold coins had Arabic on the obverse and Persian on the reverse, which again used the Ilahi calendar. And the obverse says Allahu Akbar Jalla Jallahu, which means God is great and exalted is he. And the reverse says Ahmadad Ilahi 49 Agra, which means in the month of Ahmadad, again on the Persian calendar, Ilahi, the year 49, which is about 1603 AD, and in Agra, which is obviously in Uttar Pradesh. And here's one of the Mirabi mohurs. So Allahu Akbar Jalla Jallahu, and then Ahmadad, and then the Ilahi year given here. And the mint. Now we're going to look at Baba's son, Jahangir, here riding on horseback. So Jahangir, his original name was Nuruddin Salim, and he seeks to the throne in 1605 at the age of 36. And he took the title of Jahangir, which means world Caesar. And his reign is considered by some art historians to represent the pinnacle of Mughal miniature painting and numismatics. And he's also remembered for his emphasis on justice, as he famously had bells placed outside Agra fort so that people could inform him of any injustice which they faced. But his reign would be a challenging one early on, as he had to face a rebellion from his own son, his oldest son, Khusro. And Khusro's rebellion was crushed. And later on, Khusro will be killed by his brother, Prince Khurram, who we will hear much about in future. And Jahangir is best remembered for his marriage to Nur Jahan, who would come to rule the Mughal Empire in his name in his later life. They met during Nowruz, which is the Persian New Year, and in 1611, and they married after just 2 months. Nur Jahan would stylize herself as an equal of her husband, and she would further strengthen her position by arranging for the marriage of her niece, Mumtaz Mahal, to Khurram. And this again would be very famous later on, have famous repercussions. And Jahangir's reign involved numerous military campaigns, so he made further conquest of the Mughal Empire. He formally annexed Mewar to the Mughal Empire in Rajasthan. He also captured Kangra Fort in Himachal Pradesh and crushed a rebellion in Bengal. And Jahangir also attempted to expand further into the Deccan, but these attempts were frustrated by the famous Grand Vizier of Ahmadnagar, Malak Ambar, and Ahmadnagar was, of course, one of the successor states of the Bahmani Sultanate, which I talked about in my previous lecture. And Jahangir dispatched his son, Khurram, to deal with Malik Ambar. And ultimately, Malik Ambar was defeated. And Ahmadnagar fort was captured by Khurram. But unfortunately, Khurram was less successful in recapturing Kandahar for his father, which remained in the hands of the Safavids. And later in Jahangir's life, he grew famously intoxicated with alcohol and opium, which limited his ability to rule. And in his place, Nur Jahan began playing a bigger role in government, and she would become de facto ruler of the Mughal Empire, famously. And Jahangir would spend much time traveling to Kashmir to spend time at the famous Shalimar Gardens, which he built in Srinagar. In 1626, Jahangir was captured by rebels on his way to Kashmir, and he had to be rescued by an army sent by Nur Jahan. And the following year, Jahangir died, and a brief struggle for succession ensued between Nur Jahan and Khurram. And Khurram would emerge as victorious, and he succeeded Jahangir's Mughal Emperor in 1628. And now we're going to look at Jahangir's coinage. Jahangir struck some of his earliest coins while rebelling against his father, Akbar, and he had established his court and mint at Allahabad, which is now known as Prayagraj in Uttar Pradesh. And these coins included the following inscriptions in Persian: Hamesha Ham Chu Zeher Mere Omar Rajbad Bargab Osha Jahan Sikhe Allahabad, which means, like the gold of the sun and the moon, in the east and west of the world, this coin of Allahabad. And here is one of the famous rebellious issues, even here. And this coin is actually struck in the name of Akbar in Allahabad in 1605. 1604 to 1605, so at the very end of Akbar's reign. And when Jahangir struck his own coinage, after becoming emperor, he used the Persian calendar during his reign, and these coins had Persian inscriptions on the obverse and reverse. And one of these coins, which is this one, has the following inscriptions. This is quite a rare one: Nuruddin Jahangir Shah, bin or son of Akbar Shah, and this means light of the faith, King Jahangir, son of King Akbar. And the reverse says Ma Faradin al-Hayy Zab Lahore, and in the 11th regnal year is given in the Arabic numeral script. In the month of Fabadin, which is from the Persian calendar, this coin was struck in Lahore in 1616 AD, which corresponds to the 11th regnal year of Jahangir's reign. And here is one of those repeats. So you can see here, so this is the titles of Jahangir and Akbar, and then Ma Fabadin Al-Hayy Zab Lahore, and then the numerals here. And Jahangir, also struck a style of repi with different couplets. Among them are the Alampane couplet styles, and these repis include the following inscription in Persian. Shah Nur al-Din Jahangir, again son of Akbar Badshah, Sikhe Ezad da Shahre Patna Khusro-e Alampane, which means King, Light of the World Jahangir, son of Emperor Akbar. This coin was minted in the city of Patna, famous giver of peace. Patna obviously being in Bihar today. This is the coin, struck between 1605 1627 AD. Very beautiful coin, struck in Patna. And Jahangir was fascinated by astrology, and this is reflected in his coinage, and he's famous for these coins, and they're highly desired. And these coins represented different zodiac signs, and the obverse of these coins include the zodiac symbol, and then the regnal year in Persian, which in this particular example is Sanat, and then 1-3 in the Arabic numeral system, Julus, which means in the 13th regnal year, which is about 1617 AD, and then the reverse has the following inscription in Persian: Jahangir Badshah, son of Akbar Badshah, Zab Ahmedabad, which means Emperor Jahangir, son of Emperor Akbar, struck in Ahmedabad. And here is one of those coins. You can see here, I believe it's Taurus, and then you can see inscriptions here, and then inscriptions here, with the year given in the reverse. And Jahangir also famously struck portrait mohurs. So these were mohurs or gold coins of himself, which was unprecedented in Islam, because obviously traditionally visual depiction of human beings was very much discouraged. So this is quite a remarkable achievement. And these coins are extremely rare and highly sought after by collectors. And the obverse of the mohurs depict Jahangir sitting cross-legged on a cushion, holding a flower, and it has the following inscription in Persian: Ba Ruyi Sikhe Ezad Dad Chandan Ezen Va Seva Shabi E Shah Nur al-Din Jahangir Ba Akbar Padshah, which means, upon the gold coin, much beauty and ornament, the likeness of the king, light of the faith, Jahangir, son of Emperor Akbar. And the obverse depicts a lion accompanied with the sun behind it. There's an inscription in Persian stating, Zad Bazar En Da Seke Ajmer Dine Pone Shah Nur al-Din Jahangir Ba Akbar Padshah, which means struck in gold, this coin at Ajmer, shelter of the faith, king, light of the faith, Jahangir, son of Emperor Akbar. And here is one of the gold mohurs, so very high degree of artistry and craftsmanship. Incredible coin, very rare, very expensive, highly desired today. You can see the portrait of Emperor Jahangir on a cushion holding a flower, although I think it looks like a wine cup perhaps, because he was famously an alcoholic. And then here you can see a lion sitting against the sun. So this is traditionally a Persian form of sovereignty. So this shows kind of Persian influences happening at the time. And then Jahangir also minted these kind of enormous mohurs. I think that among the biggest gold coins ever minted anywhere in the world. And one such example weighed about 11,935 grams, so it's just under 12 kilograms, so massive gold coin. And these gold coins were gifted to his ministers and generals after conducting successful military campaigns. And there's only one surviving example of one of these giant mohurs. And this surfaced in an auction in 1987 in Switzerland. And reportedly at the time, it was reported in the Indian press, it was the property of the Nizam of Hyderabad. But after the auction, perhaps after some outcry of Indian government, it has since disappeared. So nobody knows where it is. It might be in a vault somewhere in Switzerland. And but before it was put away into hiding, to be stored away safely, the mohurs inscriptions were recorded. And because of the sheer size of the flan, or the minting techniques, there's a lot of text on both the obverse and reverse in Persian. The obverse read, Abu Muzaffar Nur al-Din Muhammad Jahangir Padishah Ghazi Hazar Gune Sharif Yaft Ruyu Sikhe Wazir Zi Nokish Nam Jahangir Badshah bin Shah Akbar Ajab Mabashad Aga Zade Zawaj Sikhe Ade Bi Sikhe Khana Ash Ifraz Haman Eje. And this means, father of the victorious, light of the faith, Muhammad Jahangir, warrior emperor. The face of the die and gold receives 1,000 kinds of honor. from the design of the name of King Jahangir, son of Akbar. It would not be strange if born from the marriage of the dye and fire. In his mint, it receives its instant reward. Then the reverse reads, Duriba da al-Khilafat Agra, Santi Julus, and then 8 in the Arabic numeral script, Mutabik bi Sanat, and then 1022 in the Arabic script, Hijri. Zi Faiz Didan Muhu Uu. Hazar no Beche Ash, Hazar ba Bibaloz Zi Zef Nuru Nazar, Bi Nam Nami Obad, Sike va Khutba Behre Tabod Oz, Sike Vazi Khutba Ese. And this means that this coin, this mohur, has been struck at the abode of the Caliphate, Agra, which is now in Uttar Pradesh, in the 8th regnal year, which corresponding to 1022 Hijri, which is about 1613 to 1614 AD. From the great gift of seeing his newborn 1000 mohur, the radiant vision delights itself 1000 times. May Coinage and the Khutbah, which is the formal sermon given in the mosque during Friday prayers, be in his famous name, so long as a trace of this coin and Khutbah exist in time. And this is the enormous gold coin. The pictures don't really portray how big it is, but apparently it was an enormous coin when it was offered in auction in 1687. And this coin was struck in Agra. And also, it wasn't just Jahangir struck coins, so Nur Jahan also struck coins such as these, which are very rare. And these coins emerged as Jahangir grew weak due to his indulgence in alcohol and opium, and as Nur Jahan took a greater role in governing the Mughal Empire. And Nur Jahan struck rupees in her own name to signify this change and her position as de facto ruler of the Mughal Empire. And this made her essentially the second Muslim woman to rule India after Rajah Sultan 400 years before. And Nur Jahan's rupees became notorious after her fall from power and were actually illegal to possess when Prince Khurram became Mughal Emperor. So if I had this rupee during the reign of when Prince Khurram became Mughal Emperor, I could have been into serious trouble with the Mughal authorities. And this is why these coins are so rare, because a lot of these were actually melted down and confiscated. And Nur Jahan's rupees have inscriptions in Persian on the obverse and reverse. And one such example has in Persian, Zab Patna, and then in Arabic script, Arabic numerals, 1034 Hijri. Ba'nam Nur Jahan Badshah Begum Za, which means struck in Patna, which is now in Bihar, 1034 Hijri, which is 1624 AD, in the name of Empress Nur Jahan. And the reverse reads Jalus Sanat, and then 2020 in the Arabic numeral script, Ze Hukume Shah Jahangir Yafsad Zewa, which means in the 20th regnal year of the King Jahangir. And here's one of the rupees struck in Patna in 1624 AD. Now we're going to look at Shah Jahan, obviously famous for the building of the Taj Mahal. So Shah Jahan had formerly been Prince Khurram, who I mentioned when I spoke about Jahangir and Nur Jahan. And he took the title of Shah Jahan when he became emperor on the 19th of January, 1628. Shah Jahan's first challenge was a rebellion by the Afghan noble Khan Jahan Lodi, who had been a favorite of Shah Jahan's father Jahangir. And after his rebellion was crushed, Shah Jahan turned his focus south to the Deccan. Shah Jahan conquered Daulatabad in Maharashtra and received the submission of Golconda, which is now Hyderabad in Telangana, and Bijapur in Karnataka by 1636. Shah Jahan also attempted to conquer his ancestral Timur domains in Central Asia, but he failed numerous times between 1649 and 1656. But he was more successful in conquering Gawal and Baltistan and parts of the Brahmaputra Valley, while at the same time recognizing the independence of the Ahom kingdom in Assam. And Shah Jahan is most famous, however, for being a prolific architect, and his first building was the Shah Jahan Mosque in Kabul. He's also remembered for moving the Mughal capital from Agra to Delhi, which we founded as Shah Jahanabad, which is now Old Delhi. And it's in Delhi where he constructed the famous Lal Killa, the Red Fort, and Jama Masjid. And Shah Jahan obviously is best remembered for building the Taj Mahal in Agra for his wife Mumtaz Mahal, who died giving birth in 1631. And Shah Jahan also built in Ahmedabad, Udaipur, and Burhanpur, and renovated the forts in Gwalior, Lahore, and Agra. And 1635, Shah Jahan commissioned a manuscript to document his reign, the Pachanama, an example of which survives in Windsor in the UK. And here's obviously the Taj Mahal. And then this is a folio from the Pachanama. This is the siege of Kandahar in Maharashtra. And equally famous as his patronage of architecture and the arts is the struggle between Shah Jahan's sons after he fell ill in 1627. And the most famous of his sons who competed for the Mughal throne were Dar Shikoh and Muhi-ud-Din Muhammad, later known as Aurangzeb. Dar Shikoh stylized himself as a tolerant ruler in the model of Akbar, but unfortunately wasn't militarily competent. Militarily competent. This is in contrast to Muhi-ud-Din, who was a military veteran. He had fought in Afghanistan and had experience fighting in the Deccan. This military experience would help Muhi-ud-Din, or Aurangzeb as later known, defeat his rival brothers, and he would seize the Mughal throne in 1658, imprisoning his father in Agra. And Shah Jahan, can look at his coinage now. So Shah Jahan struck rupees and copper dirhams, as his predecessor had done. And however, in seeking to reassert control over his ancestral Timurid lands in Central Asia, he sought to invoke the memory of his ancestor, Amir Timur. And on his coinage, he used the astrological term Sahib Kirani Sani, which means second lord of the fortunate conjunction, which is based on Timur's title Sahib Kiran, which means lord of the conjunction. These silver rupees include the following inscriptions in Persian: Shah Jahan, Bacha Ghazi, Sahibi Kirani Sani, Zab Ujjain, which is now in Malwa, in Madhya Pradesh. So it translates as Shah Jahan, warrior emperor, second lord of the conjunction, struck in Ujjain. And here's one of the rupees, which I also have here. This is the actual one pictured. This is struck in Ujjain. So you can see here, Badshah, Shah Jahan, and then the Kalima here, and the names of the Rashidun, the Sunni caliphs here. And this style was also imitated somewhat by Shah Jahan's son, Murad Bakhsh, when there was a brief kind of civil war between Shah Jahan's son. So it kind of follows. So this coin of Murad Bakhsh, quite scarce, also follows the same kind of template as his father. This example being struck in Ahmedabad. And Shah Jahan also harkened back to his ancestors, Babur, Humayun and Akbar, when he struck the Shahrukhi. And these coins were struck during the Mughal campaigns in Badakhshan, which saw a brief occupation of Balkh, and where these coins were struck. And these silver Shahrukhis include the following inscription in Persian: Shah Jahan Bacha Ghazi, which means Shah Jahan, warrior emperor. And here is one of the Shahrukhis struck in Balkh between 1628 and 1658. You see Badshah here and Ghazi. And now I'm going to look at Aurangzeb, the most controversial of the Mughal emperors. So Prince Muhyiddin, which was his former title, seated the Mughal throne in 1658 as Aurangzeb, also as Alamgir I. He is remembered as one of India's most controversial rulers in history. He was very religious, and this dictated his policies, which have left a very heavily disputed legacy. He's been accused of fomenting communalism in India, with his reintroduction of the jizya tax on non-Muslims, famously. Yet his religious piety was in contrast to the fact that more Hindus worked in the Mughal Empire than ever before, and a lot of these came from the Marathas and Rajputs. And Aurangzeb's first move in 1658 was to defeat all his rivals, who were Dar Shikoh, Murad Bakhsh, and Shah Shuja. And after accomplishing this, he would communicate with his father Shah Jahan through written correspondences, and he would tell off his father for favouring Dar Shikoh over him. But yet, he let his father live as a prisoner in Agra, famously, under the care of Jahanara, Aurangzeb's sister, and Shah Jahan will pass away on the 1st of February 1656, and he will be buried next to his wife Mumtaz Mahal in the Taj Mahal. And under Aurangzeb, the Mughal Empire grew to its wealthiest. It became extremely wealthy, as Professor Pundheer hinted at the end of after my lecture before. And state revenue increased to over 13 million copper dirhams per annum, as compared to Akbar's 6 million copper dirhams, so almost double. And the growth in the cash economy, thanks to the sale of cash crops, such as indigo and cotton, led to the emergence of the wealthy zamindars and village elites. Hundreds of small towns known as qasbas emerged across North India, and these became centers of trade and economic activity. And the English and Dutch had to ship 35 tons of silver and half a ton of gold each year to pay for their purchases of cash crops. And all these precious metals would reach the Mughal treasury and be minted as coinage. And here is a chart which kind of shows the growth of that. So you can see between 1582, if you compare the amount of silver coming in, this is bullion exported to Gujarat. So you can see here enormous increase in silver being exported and being struck as coinage. Almost 6 times between 1582 and 1700. This shows the level of prosperity in the Mughal Empire in Aurangzeb's reign. And Aurangzeb also is most famous also for his military campaigns. So he used his kind of wealth to fund his constant wars in India. In the 1660s, he occupied Guwahati in Assam for 20 years before eventually having to relinquish it to the Ahom kingdom. He was more successful in conquering territory from the kingdom of Arakan in Myanmar, and he was able to annex Chittagong in 1666. And Aurangzeb also had to deal with tribal revolts in the northwest part of his empire in the Afghan frontier regions. But it was in the Deccan where Aurangzeb would focus the rest of his military career. And Aurangzeb's most famous opponent in the Deccan was the Maratha ruler Shivaji, who's a very adept military tactician, used the mobility of his forces to harass the Mughals. His most daring raid was against Surat in Mughal Gujarat, where he was able to carry away 10 million rupees in plunder. And in 1665, as a response to these raids, the Mughals assembled a large army and forced Shivaji to surrender and submit as a vassal. But famously, Shivaji would escape the Mughal court and return back to the Deccan and rebel again against Aurangzeb. And he raided the B.H.U Sultanate and the Mughal Empire, where he again sacked Surat and took 6.5 million rupees. And in 1674, Shivaji formally crowned himself king and then allied himself with the Golconda Sultanate to resist the Mughals. After his death in 1681, Shivaji would leave the Maratha kingdom to his son, Shambhaji, who succeeded him as ruler. And to deal with the threat of the Marathas, Aurangzeb shifted his capital from Delhi to the Deccan, but he was unable to do so initially. And he turned his focus to the remaining Delhi sultanates. So he conquered B.H.U in 1685 and Golconda in 1687. And then after conquering these places, Aurangzeb resumed his focus on the Marathas, where he dealt with Shambhaji, who he was able to capture and execute. But despite the death of Shambhaji, the Marathas remained a threat to Mughal rule and continued to create problems for Aurangzeb. And Aurangzeb would spend the last years of his life trying to combat the threat of the Marathas. But this focus on the Deccan weakened the Mughal Empire as the focus of power shifted south. And this led to rebellions against Mughal rule by the Jats, for example, near Agra. This was a sign of future instability, which would seriously destabilize the Mughal Empire after Aurangzeb. And Aurangzeb would die on the 3rd of March, 1707, and he was buried in Kuldabad in Maharashtra. And Aurangzeb minted silver rupees, and these often included kind of couplets, and these included kind of Persian inscriptions, such as the following: Sikhe Zad Ba Jahan, Sho Badre Muni, Shah Aurangzeb Alamgir, which means stamped coin in the world like a full bright moon, King Aurangzeb Alamgir. And here is one of the coins. And this has the Badre Muni rupee, struck in 116 Hijri, 1705, and Shah Jahan mint. And here's also an example, minted in a different year, but you can see the design. Yeah. And Aurangzeb also struck gold mohurs, and these were struck as a template for future Mughal mohurs. And these gold coins have inscriptions on the obverse and reverse. And on the obverse it says, Sikhe Zadda Jahan Chu Miri Muni Badshah Aurangzeb Alamgir, which means stamped coin in the world like a full bright sun, Emperor Aurangzeb Alamgir. And then the obverse reads in Persian, Sanat 40 Jalus Zab Nusratabad. It's not known where Nusratabad is, but what we can tell from this coin is that this coin was struck in the 40th regnal year of Aurangzeb's reign, which is about 1696 AD. And here is the gold mohur with the Mir Munir couplet struck in Nusratabad in 1696 AD. And this type of gold coin will serve as a template for gold coins under Aurangzeb's successors. And thank you for that, and my lecture is now concluded.
It was really a very nice lecture, and from the beginning to end, it gravitated our attention to the talk which you gave, and really it was very wonderful to listen to the history, I should say, of medieval India through the coins. People are aware with the political, social, and other aspects of the history, but how that found reflection in the coins, that is very interesting to know. Now we have our honorable expert, Prof.M.S Pundheer, and we are very much benefited by his presence throughout the lecture, and he has kindly accepted to preside over the lecture. So I request him to kindly come up with his observations and also something like what will he feel and what his expert opinion is about the coins. And although this is not the topic, the culture of the medieval India as such is not the main topic. The topic is the coins during Mughal period. So confining to that, and maybe some reflections on the culture of Mughal India, which we find expression through the coins. Prof. Pundheer may throw light on that. So I request Prof. Pundheer to kindly please come up with his observations. Sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir, Professor Pandey. And first of all, I would like to congratulate Dr. Azeem Ali. He presented a very fantastic survey of Mughal coinage system. You know, Mughal coinage system, and apart from other things, Mughals contributed a lot in architecture, lot in political system, lot in social system. Mughals' contribution is enormous. But apart from these, in the field of so many fields, their contribution in the field of the economy is also can be considered tremendous. You know, such type of the elaborate coinage system is unparalleled. Even in the contemporary world of the Mughals, none of the empire produced such an elaborate coinage system. And now the question arises, such an elaborate system, why Mughals developed? The reason is again economy. You know, Mughal, they developed the economy on a larger scale. For an advanced economy, a very, you can say, elaborate coinage system is necessary, is essential, because Mughal economy is monetized. And for the monetization, for the flow of the economy, coins are very important. You know, these coins not only reflected a simple coin or money of the Mughals, but these coins also carry aesthetic sense. The stacking of these coins involve a great technology, die casting, so many technology involved in these stacking in these coins. Another important characteristic feature of these coinage system is that, to our surprise, you can say the weight of these coins, the shape of these coins are providing a very harmonious picture, very harmonious picture. And to my surprise, Mughals, they controlled this minting of the coins on such a scale, in such a way, even, you know, a large number of the mints are existed in a different part of the Mughal Empire, but they were stacking the coins of a, you can say, a great accuracy. And this accuracy cannot be achieved without central monitoring. Apart from it, you know, the metal, they use 3 and 4 metal to stack these coins. And before up to the time of the Shah Jahan, we don't get any device. The purity of the metals, you know, they make some metals to make the coins very hard, so it cannot be diluted by passing through from one hand to another hand. And these metal mixing, the proportion of the mixing alloying all these metals is so accurate. I never get such type of the accuracy in the coinage system of any other empire. Mughals, they struck down the coins of a large, you can say, denominations. Their denominations cater the need of the economic transaction from lower level to upper level. Dr. Azeem Ali, you have provided a very good picture of the Mughal coinage system. You have incorporated all the coins, and apart from it, I think, have you ever visited any mint? The physical structure of the mint?
No, unfortunately not, because I think a lot of the mints have been lost.
Sometime you do one thing, you visit the Fatehpur Sikri and also visited there is a karkhana, a mint.
Oh, I never saw that. I never saw that. I've been many times.
When you visit that mint, then you can realize a very advanced technology is involving in all that. How they created the molds of the terracotta, how some coins they have stuck down, and even in your survey, some coins are incised, rest of the coins are embossed. In itself, making a coin incised or making a coin embossed, it needs great expertise. One thing, they always pay the attention on the metal, and on the other hand, they also paid a great attention on the mixing of a very good proportion they have used to mix the different metals. Apart from it, they uses the inscription on all that. Some Arabic, Persian, and I think you have already noticed, because now due to the paucity of the time, you simply provided this survey, but the different, you can say, the script of the Arabic and Persian they have used on these coins. The coinage system, Mughals they introduced, and to your surprise, even Mughals, the Mughal coinage system continued with the same tender even up to the Marathas. Even in the successor states, even in the beginning of the Mughals, in the beginning of the Britishers, they uses the same coins. And it's a different case that they converted into a bullion. Clive has taken away a lot of wealth, and all these wealth, he extracted from after Plassey, these all extracted wealth was in the form of the coins. And this type of the coinage system could not be possible without testing the coins. Mughals did not only develop this type of the coinage system, but they also developed a very elaborate machinery. Apart from striking down these coins, this machinery and another machinery is involved in authenticate these coins, like Sarraf. And to your surprise, such a machinery to testify the purity of these coins was never developed after the Mughals. Even Jagat Seth, and during the period of the 18th century, when the Bengal Nawabs, the Jagat Seth, they took over this charge of testifying the coins, minting the coins, but even Jagat Seth was failed to issue the coins with such accuracy as Mughals struck down. No doubt, Dr. Azeem Ali, your lecture is very interesting, providing all the information. In a very short time, you have provided all the information about the coins. And Without these coins, Mughals had no economy. And these coins are the sequel of the political expansion of the Mughals. Different regions come in a single head, under the single head. Now they need such type of the coinage system which can lubricate the whole economy. Mughal economy is totally, Akbar has standardized the coinage system. After the Akbar, Jahangir, Shah Jahan, of course they issued new coins, but the standardization in the Mughal currency system was introduced by the Akbar. And you know very well, Aurangzeb, he remained 25 years in the south. All the wealth for the purpose of maintaining their campaigns in the south, the money he extracted from, of course, in the form of the land revenue, in the form of the toll taxes, this money was being used by the Aurangzeb in the south. And it could be possible just because of the coinage system. Dr. Azeem Ali, I again congratulate you. And after so many years, I got a scholar who want to look into the Mughal economy. Azeem sir, and thanks for such a lecture, because you made me to recall my PhD times, and to your surprise, I completed my PhD in regional economic history of Mughals. Yeah. And sir, Professor Pandey, I congratulate you, and I'm thankful to you. Because of you, it could be possible for me to listen such a good lecture by a very young personality. And Dr. Azeem Ali, sometime you come to Aligarh.
Yeah, okay. My Khalujan studied in Aligarh, so yeah, I would definitely like to go there. My Khalujan also studied there.
Okay, okay, that's very good. And you also visited some mints of the Mughals. In Fatehpur Sikri, in Burhanpur, these structure of the mints were still there, are still there. And their technology you can easily explore.
I have a question, actually. What about in Lucknow and Varanasi? Because they had mints there. Did they survive or no?
The structure is totally in a ruinous condition.
Okay. In Varanasi, there is a place called Mint that was presided over by James Prinsep. That is in Varanasi. James Prinsep was in charge of the minting in Varanasi in 1828.
Professor Pandey, he was asking about the structure which was created by the Mughals.
Yeah, like in Lucknow also, Lucknow mint, which had become very famous in Uttar Pradesh later on. That was kind of started, that really kind of grew under the Mughals.
But the minting of the coins started from Agra.
Okay.
This structure, fortunately, still survived. Now you see what type of the defense system, what type of the security. Even the structure was built in such a way that nobody can take away these coins from it. How much water they needed. So many things you can get there. And with these few words, I would like to conclude. Again, I thank you. I'm thankful to Dr. Azeem Ali. कि बहुत साल पुरानी बातें वो एकदम याद आ गई, minting की or something like that. And it's no doubt it's a very good lecture. And I feel privileged today as professor, because of the Professor Pandey, I got this an opportunity to listen such a young, dynamic scholar. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Really, it was. We are very fortunate to have you here in Banaras University, as you have always been here on the presence of PhD Viva and the things like that. But here, it was very nice that we could hear Dr. Azeem Ali in the context or in the background of, or in the presence of your towering personality. So, really, we are very, very fortunate
Thank you, sir, for such kind words.
And under heritage management, we have started the course Heritage Management in the Department of History, Banaras University. So the whole Mughal India and you can say the medieval India is part of the heritage of India, I should say. So the students should be exposed to some aspects or the several aspects of the Indian heritage from ancient to medieval to the modern period.
So, it's a very good initiative, very, very good initiative. I appreciate your efforts because, through these lectures, at least these students can understand the different facets of the history reconstruction.
Yes, and it will be very good that those students and the scholars who even anyhow could not attend the lecture, they may again consult the lecture or hear the lecture that will be placed on net of the Banaras University website and also on YouTube. So it will be for the wider audience to look into it and to see and to learn. So I thank again Professor Pundheer Sahab that he spared his time, valuable time to come and to